All right. One of the questions that somebody had was they wanted us to talk about prenups. We have talked about it in the past, but I guess, it's been a little bit. Maybe we can just do a little refresher. Also, it's, I guess, more relevant now than it ever has been, especially for us specifically because we are, I guess, planning to get married, speaking. So then I guess it makes sense to kind of maybe freshen up a little bit.
Sure.
It's funny enough, I brought it up the other because I'm gonna get married before you, legally speaking.
Sure.
So I brought it up to Claudia. I was like, I brought it up. I was like, hey, should we get a prenup? Like, what do you think? And she's like, well, what are we gonna write in the prenup? Like, we don't have anything. Like, she's like, oh, we could do like a post nuptial. Like, once you're married and there's something to have split. I guess it may make more sense. And I'm like, realistically speaking, we don't have any assets. Like, we don't have any homes that we own or anything like that, or like so anything or substantially enough to warrant, I guess, a prenup. Like, if one of us had like some money, it may make sense. But at the end of the day, right now we're kind of both broke. So she was like, does it make sense? I'm like, oh, actually, it's a good point. I don't know if it makes sense. So then, to your point, what do you think?
So it's funny because I think I've always been like pro prenup.
Yeah.
And just because like you're more in control of what happens, right? And I remember the first time that I brought this up to Christina, she was like, "For what?" And I think that that's how most women approach that. They're like, "Well, for what? Like, why do you want that?" And it's because it has such like it's like there's a stigma behind it. It's like such a negative kind of connotation when you hear that. Cause it's like, what are you trying to hide? Or I thought what was mine, what was yours. But ironically, and when we went to Bali, remember we were talking about because she the whole goal was to kind of settle down in the city that her family is, my family is, just to kind of keep everybody together, and so she was able to do that with the help of her family, and congratulations to them, and it's what a fortunate position to be in on her end, but then it's like, okay, well, you know that if we were together, right, and we legally get married and we divorce, like, technically that house is half mine. She's like, whoa.
Exactly.
Right? And so it's funny, like, when the shoe's on the other foot, or, like, kind of like when the tables turn, how the perspective changes a little
Right,
bit.
because not for anything, she was like, no, like, obviously a lot of work. Like, now she sees how much work and how much money goes into something, right? And then she's like, well, if something happens, no, like, that wouldn't be fair. So kind of to speak on that, yeah, it wouldn't be fair, but that's how a lot of men end up in positions where it's not fair for them either, and they get screwed. And you don't see any women standing for their defense either. They're like, oh,
Right.
well, tough luck.
And in those situations, I mean, you can always have that kind of within the prenup where it's like, maybe for the first 5 years or 10 years, because we're discussing like, oh, well, I'm paying towards a mortgage, and essentially that's like rent for me.
Yeah.
But that's money that I'm not kind of creating an asset or growth on my end. So yeah, it's like, I'm paying into this, and she's not only paying down her debt, but she's also gaining equity with over time, how like it's accruing interest, not accruing interest, but kind of growing in value.
Sure.
And then I get nothing out of it. So it's like, okay, well, maybe after a certain time, it's like where the percentage of the sale or the price of the house, eventually you get something.
Yeah.
Right. So instead of, okay, first 5 years, there's nothing. You pay into it, it's nothing. But maybe years 6 to 10, you get a percentage of whatever this, you know what I mean?
Right.
And those are certain things that you can discuss with your partner for it to be fair. And I think that that's what marriage should be all about. And it doesn't have to be this 50-50 thing that we always talk about, because we all contribute differently. That's kind of the same thing. So for instance, if a man were the breadwinner and the woman was a stay-at-home mom, I don't think the prenup should say, hey, you're not getting shit because I'm the one making the money. But it's like, she plays a very substantial role within your life, within the family and the home, to a certain degree. If there is a divorce, but there is something owed to that.
You can make the argument she's at home raising your kid and giving you the opportunity to be at work to make money, because if she wasn't there,
who would take care of?
Exactly. Either you would have to work less, making less money, or you would have to pay for child care,
right,
which you're not doing because you have your wife at home. So, I would never, like I'm not a proponent on that. Like, oh, you're staying at home, and then if you split, you don't get shit. Like, that's not right. Because it's not, unless you're staying at home and there's no kids and you're just there scratching your ass, okay, different. But you're raising a family, and that's a full-time job on its own. So I guess I guess it depends on the circumstance, and I do agree it needs to be fair. But again, like, when you turn in that paper and it's now you're kind of giving the power to the state, because if something happens and you split, the government will or a judge will decide what's gonna happen. So if
Correct.
you don't have a prenup, and you've made this point before, if you don't have the prenup, it's kind of like a gamble. So a prenup is not a foolproof. It's not like 100%, but it can at least have some parameters of like, okay, what do you want to happen if God forbid something goes down?
Yeah, yeah. I don't think that we can't be blind to the possibilities. I mean, we've heard so many stories, and it's funny because sometimes I talk to my fiance about it, and it's like, listen, like we're looking at a divorce. Like, oh, we divorced after 7 years being married, and I look at her, I look at my fiance, and I look at them, and I'm like, they were together for 7 years,
Yeah.
and they still thought that it was better to be divorced than to separate. And I'm like, man, I hope that doesn't happen to us because no one gets into a relationship thinking of divorce. You're the one that said that.
Yeah, 100%.
So you think everything is fine and dandy, and I think that's when you and your significant other should agree to what could happen if that does occur.
Yeah.
And I think you being on the same page, I think it just makes it fair and makes it understanding rather than you just leaving it up to chance. And if you do present the idea of a prenup to your significant other and they're completely against it, that is a huge red flag.
Yeah.
Because I'm just thinking like, well, are there other ulterior motives? Because it's not like, oh, you're trying to hide things from me. It's like, no, this is where we sit down and agree how we can divide the things.
Yeah.
God forbid something were to happen. So I think it's extremely important. And even to this point where I would say that Christina's more of like the significant one, but whether it's her backing and, with her family and now with the house, it's like to this point, I still agree that there should be a prenup. And I'm on the losing end of
Yeah,
this, right?
technically, she'd be more inclined to want to do a prenup,
Right.
at least in the
Now
current
that she
state of
understands
affairs. Yeah,
what it is, yeah,
exactly.
it would benefit her much more than it would benefit me. Well, yeah, it would.
Yeah,
And at that point, even I
definitely.
agree because like it's not like I'm even. And granted, we're on good terms, which is when you would want to do one, because obviously, if you're on bad terms, you want to take everything, right?
Yeah.
Depending on when it happens. But I don't want to take anything from her, especially not in this case. Now, if we're together for 10 years and shit happens, at some point, it's like, look, like I know it's your house, but I could have been investing into my own property, or I could have been doing my own assets or trying to growing my own thing, but instead of been paying down our home. But I get nothing out of it after we divorce. Like then I'm completely fucked after that, which is kind of what most women feel would happen. But again, that's where you have these conversations and you kind of agree.
Yeah, I think especially if, like in your case, for example, if you're paying into a mortgage, into your partner's or husband's or wife's mortgage, I think after X amount of years and you end up separating and getting a divorce, I think you should be entitled to some of that equity, or if you sell the house, whatever equity you've gained, you should be able to receive at least half of it. Because now,
Well,
let's say
I
5,
think
10, 15 years, you pay it into this mortgage, some of that equity is yours, dude.
Right, and that's why I say not so much half, but I think it just has to be something that makes sense,
Yeah,
something comparable. So
right.
say you throw percentages in there, it goes up X percent, you receive Y percent, right, or half X,
Yes.
whatever the fuck
Yeah,
it is.
I guess how you can.
But as long as you make it make sense, where it's not like someone's getting completely shafted.
Yeah.
Because we look at the instance of Kevin Costner, we've spoken about him before.
Yes, we have.
Actor of Yellowstone, where he's been an actor for many years, but Yellowstone was one that really blew up.
Mhm.
And he had a prenup with his wife.
Yeah.
They were getting divorced, and she's like, oh, Kevin Costner is worth millions of dollars because of his show. But the prenup said, this is what we agreed on. And now
Yeah.
she's like, well, wait a minute.
She was the prenup was done like X amount of years. He didn't have what he has now, so she wants to go back on the. But that's defeats the purpose of a prenup, because the idea is we agreed upon is X amount, and the idea is that this is a legal binding agreement, and no amount of time or me making more money should change that agreement. So
But now I am thinking, so at that point, let's say you start at this point. Right now, you're
Mhm.
worth $1 million, right? You do the prenup, you're on board, and in 20 years, your net worth goes up to 50. Where do you say, okay, I think we need to renew the prenup?
I think that's for a couple to decide, and as
But-
the marriage
But
goes on,
right,
you say,
but imagine
do
that's
we-
that even presentation of the conversation, because it's almost like, why do you want to, like, oh, now that I'm making more money, you want to double check the prenup, you want to do a post nuptial? Like,
yeah.
I can see how that conversation can be very uncomfortable if you have to like review it.
Yes, I could see how it could become uncomfortable, but then you can also say, well, it depends on the circumstance and how the relationship is with your partner. We always talk about honesty, being transparent, being vulnerable. If the woman says, or even I think it would be wise for the man also to acknowledge, maybe you guys had 3, 4 kids, and your wife has spent the past 15, 16, 10 years raising your children. She's done a remarkable job, and you can say, you know what, now I've been able to achieve all these other things because I had someone at home who kind of helped me, who was by my side. I think it's an honest conversation to have. Hey, listen, like I know we signed this agreement 15 years ago, but the landscape has changed. Would you be willing to have a conversation about
I
it?
think it would be very important if you present that up front in the beginning, where you say, "Hey,
Oh, yeah.
every 5 years, I think we should review the prenup or whatever. Make sure everything still makes sense based on where we at in our lives."
Yeah.
Right? Because say what if the fucking woman, in this case, the sitter, let's say the man's the breadwinner and the woman isn't. What if she comes up with a bikini line or a lipstick cosmetic line, whatever, and she pops off at that point? It's like, well, where do we balance out that kind of
Yeah.
growth in net worth or whatever, something, whatever situation you want to put. But it's like, yeah, I think that if you present it up front, like, hey, I think every 5 years we should review it just to kind of see where we're at. We wanted to make sure because God forbid if there is something, we want to make sure that, you know, we're not leaving ourselves on the streets or leaving each other on the streets.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, you know, we've said it. The best thing to do is always prevent something from happening and being honest at the beginning and stuff like that. But yeah, that would be ideal. Having like, you know how we talk about like relationship check-ins. Once you're married, I think there should be some certain things like how are we looking with our finances or prenup. Da, da, da. I think that's a healthy way to kind of bring up an otherwise uncomfortable conversation.
I agree. I think having a routine check, kind of check,
like a wellness check.
Absolutely. And it's funny you say that because I think of so many relationships that they get started and they think that, oh, it's just supposed to work. It's not supposed to be problems or anything. Or the other side where it's like, well, every relationship has problems, which sure, to a certain degree. But if you never discuss those problems or create almost an appointment or like I said, a check-in for us to review everything that's been going on, like when do you address those certain things without it being uncomfortable? I think it's best if you start off the relationship with like, hey, I think every so often, 3 months, 6 months, a year, we do like a check-in of everything that's happened and then reflect and see if there's any changes that have to be done. That way, if there is ever a, hey, you know, for this one, I think we need to talk about the monetary stuff or maybe, God forbid, something happens, let's revisit that.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I like that.
So, yeah, prenups, yay? Or for you, nay?
No, I think yay.
So you're still going to do one?
Yeah. If not a prenup, maybe like a postnup for sure. Now it doesn't make sense because we both don't own anything. Like on your side,
we own this. You can't have any of this.
Yeah, that absolutely. But that's But like in your case, you know, your fiance has an actual asset that she's bought. You would have to. It would be wise to put something in writing.
Might get I can't even get an attorney.
My attorney is
her cousin. I'm screwed.
Yeah, he's gonna fuck you over. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, guys, let us know if you guys have any personal experiences. Obviously, we're new to everything, and maybe you've gone through, you know, marriage, prenups, postnuptial, and hey, this worked for me. Wish I would have done this. Let us know.
Have you ever had an instance where a prenup backfired?
Yeah.
Let us know. Tell us.
You brought it up. She fucking left you, or some shit like that, or red flags fucking popped up left and right. This is the place to kind of.
Or did you get a prenup and then within 6 months they fucking break up with you?
Yeah, could be something like that. Let us know.
I want to know. Tell us your prenup stories.
Let us know, guys.
Later.
See ya.